It is another fine day in the Drake Custom Bass Shop. I'm Andrew, and today we are here with a guitar. As you can tell, it's not a bass, but we do repairs as well. And so we have this Epiphone acoustic. It's the FT145 model. I'm not sure the year of this, but I'm guessing late 60s maybe. I could be wrong. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know a lot about Epiphone, all the different models and when they were made and things like this. I do know that I've had this particular model in the shop before, or at least ones that might be similar, because they have this unique bolt-on neck thing here. So the neck actually comes out right off, almost like an electric. And so I've dealt with a couple of these. I'm not sure if they were all the same model. I guess they had this exact same neck situation though. Big complaint on this is there's definitely when I really knock on this, you can hear loose braces that are no longer attached. I'm going to have to get those glued back on. The bridge is reportedly, these strings are not anywhere close to being up to pitch, and when they are, this bridge just goes like that, and probably because the top has detached from the braces. And so I'm gonna get those glued back on, but then if it still pitches a little bit too much that way, we might go for the Bridge Doctor install, which is a truss system that runs to the tail block, and as you tighten, it will actually correct the top. It'll bend the top back down flat, and so that'll be probably the second step. And then the third step, once we get that all sorted out, is to convert this to a left-hand guitar, because the client is left-handed, and that will require a new nut. And on acoustics, it's really hard to flip orientations, but this particular saddle is rather straight across. It's not compensated like we would normally think on an acoustic, ever so slightly, but I think the saddle's wide enough that if I got a little bit creative with some filing and I made a new saddle, I would be able to compensate it enough to at least play reasonable in the lower positions, which is where the client says he spends most of his time up here. And I think we can get it to reasonably intonate. And it is a family heirloom, so he wants to be able to play it, wants to get in playing condition, but he's not really looking for the full restoration and keep everything, like the Bridge Doctor would be an add-on that he is comfortable with. He actually wants this instrument to last and be playable for the future. So we're going to get set up here and do a little bit more in-depth evaluation, but that's our goal for this particular guitar. Stay tuned. Okay, we're going to take this neck off because we can, and it actually might be easier to get into that, fixing that brace and all that, if I don't have to fight with the neck and all that. So, and we have the neck is free. It's got a crack running down here. I might get some glue into that if need be. I'll get some glue into it anyway. Let's see what mysteries lie within the pocket here. Yeah, there's a shim. I don't really see any reason why that neck had a big gap right here, so it just probably needed to be tightened down. Over time, wood shrinks, things loosen up, so probably all there is to that. But we're going to tackle that brace first. This has been a messy job. I have more cleanup to do in there. I used fish glue so I can use a damp cloth and wipe up even more of the glue. This was a tough one. I don't know if it's just because of the diameter of this sound hole, but I'm just barely able to get in there and move around with a syringe. I've tried every device, some StewMac devices I have, and a few other, pipettes and things like that to get glue into all the right spots. You just can't get an arm in there with the light, see the mirror, and then reach in there with a clamp and place it properly. So it was get glue in, and as it's dripping down and sliming down onto the bottom, maneuver clamps. And I had a couple clamps going, but I have one that I've put back in there. This is all after the fact. The glue's been dry for several days. I'll pull it out and you can see what I made. It's a call, so because I had to clamp a longer distance. It's back in there. I had to clamp a longer stretch of the brace. That was where it was cracked and broken coming out the end. So the back, which is good because the very far out reach is still glued to the top nicely, and it broke loose, and then all the way up to in here, it was detached. The X brace actually goes over here. It was detached up to about here, and then there's this was also broken, so that was clamped. Also, in the midway point, there was another clamp in there holding another part of the brace in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and pause here. I'm gonna get this clamp out, and I'll show you how I made a little clamp or caul to go on the end. Okay, so the clamp is out, and you can see I made a little wood block that has a trough on there, and I wanted it, see how it kind of rotates a little bit, because when I get it in there, I'm looking through the mirror, I have to kind of shake it to get it to the right angle, or hit it against the side or something in there, and move it around, and then get it into place, and then hold pressure upward on it while I get all the thumb screws. It was a real chore. I had to wait to do this because I had to order some special clamps. The clamps I've been using for many years just don't work, and this is a smaller than, it doesn't seem to be by looking at it, but it's a lot smaller than I'm used to working with. I mean, yeah, it's smaller than some of the other guitars I repair. So getting things in there and in place, I padded the backside of these maple cauls just to prevent damage to the surface. This was the little one that we put because that second clamp had to go pretty much right on the foot of the bridge there. This was not the cleanest job. As you can see, there's glue. There was no good way to do it, so I used fish glue because with a damp cloth I can reach in there and remove most of that. I pride myself on not making a mess, but in this case I had no really alternative, with the damage being clear back into here, and even with my arm wedged in there, you really have limited areas to move around. My wife's arm is a lot smaller, her hand's much smaller, and she had to reach back in there a little bit, and even then it was like we couldn't get to it very easily. So sometimes we have to put a lot of glue and reach back with a brush and try to brush it into place, tipping the guitar onto its side so it's not just all dripping onto the back there. You can see where I wiped it up a little bit, and the other good thing about the fish glue is that it sands easy, so that little bit on the brace clear in the back, I'll either be able to just reach in there and peel that off, or maybe sand it off. This is an old guitar, and we're on a really tight budget for it. It's a family heirloom. It's not going to be sold, so it won't be on the market. The customer just really wants it in playing condition, and so yeah, we did what we could. All right, we're moving on. I push down on the screw sticking up, and it left little impressions, so I know right where the bolts will come up. So I'm going to put a spot of thin super glue on that crack, and then I'm going to go drill the holes to let the screws slide through the shim. As you can see, it's a pretty substantial shim. I've marked them with pencil. There is a cutout in my little press here, so I can kind of, if I was to look down in there, I can see, but you know, I can just eyeball it too and just kind of somewhat get centered. I press down on these on the weak end here because the spinning of the drill will just tear up the wood on these shims. And I have a little tool to pop out. Incidentally, I use these to also make dot position markers when I recreate old Fender style instruments. There we go. Now these thicker ones, I might have to hit the gas on. It's thicker, it can handle the turning of the actual bit. There we go. Pop the a little bit of movement around here. We were able to line those up. Now, the reason why I do full pocket shims and not just back here is because we don't want a rising tongue. The screws can exert a lot of force pulling down, and if you just have a shim back here, it leaves a big gap, especially through here. And what these screws will do is pull the neck down, and then you start having what they call a rising tongue, where this has a bend in it, and the longer that goes, the more permanent it becomes. Okay, great. We have a good 1/8 of an inch height that we can get away with having a saddle. The previous saddle was low, and this was bottomed out just to get the strings, because like I said, it wasn't bad. The strings were nice low to the action, but there was almost no break point from the pins to where it breaks over the saddle, and we want a little bit of height. A little bit of height will add some volume, things like that. And now the neck gives us just enough for me to fashion a new saddle and have this guitar set up nicely. My biggest concern is I'm worried that the braces, we got as much glue as we could in there. I imagine it's enough. I can't get feeler gauge in anywhere, so it did make good contact, but we never really know these things until we put, you know, the pressure from all the strings at pitch. So, all right, I'm going to be removing the nut, which will probably come away pretty easy, but I always score around with a razor to prevent chipping any finish out. Alright. Should knock free this piece of MDF here. There we go. A little cleanup work to do. Some pretty hefty blobs of glue on the back. The back of that nut was not flat. It was actually somewhat concave, so a lot of glue was applied to hold it on. I'm not too worried. I want this edge to be nice and square for the nut to go back on, and a new nut. I'm going to be making a new one, but it has a 0 fret in play, So we're not moving the brake line where the string needs to start from. We're not messing with that at all. On a conventional style nut, you definitely do not want to remove material from the back side of this, at least not enough to change the intonation between where the nut takeoff point is and that first fret. I'll use this chisel as a scraper here. Clean this up as best I can. Alright. What is that? Old buffing compound? Anyway, we'll find out. I remove the truss nut. It appears to be 5mm. It was actually rather loose. Came out really easy. I'll get some oil back on the threads and get that back into place after cleaning off some of the corrosion. I already roughed this nut in, but I'm going to make the string slots deep enough there, and do a little bit more shaping. Alright, so got most of the shaping done. I'm just going through a series of sandpapers, trying to remove all the tool marks left from the file. Take off some of these sharp edges. That's it. Now when I had it mounted onto the guitar, I did draw a pencil line right where the edge of the fretboard wood stops, and the reason why I've slotted down that deep is because the guitar has a 0 fret, so I need these to be lower so there's pull down over top of that 0 fret. The 0 fret acts actually as the nut, and it is on the break point for the scale. If I don't have these deep enough, then the strings will rattle on top of the 0 fret. Okay, I'm going to make a new saddle. Just got a blank here that I'm going to trim down. According to my gauges here, the fretboard radius is 9.5. If I can get this lined up, I'm going to copy that onto the blank so I can match that. I'm kind of mapped out the material, the area I need to remove material from. We're going to try to compensate for the slight angle that the bridge currently has for a right-handed player. For a left-handed player, it's going to be out if I was just to reverse the saddle. So gotta file away some material. My goal is to have the break point more to this end on this end, and then more to this side on that end. So I basically have to angle it all the way across. I'm just reshaping this saddle. This composite material actually shapes rather well with the scraper. Just trying to get the break angle to be more oriented for a left-hand player. it probably won't compensate perfectly, but it'll be close. With the slope of the actual saddle slot currently on the guitar, for it being a right-handed guitar, this may end up being just not really compensated at all. It may just make it so it actually is straight across, but I've actually had a few acoustics in here over the years that was how they were made, and they actually seem to be pretty close intonation wise, so we might just have to go with that. I can fine tune the saddle a little bit once we reach that point. And before stringing this up, I'm going to clean up these frets a little bit. They're a little tarnished. There's not much fret wire left, so there's not really enough left to crown, but I can try to clean up some of the chatter from whoever took a file or sanding block or whatever to sand these down as flat as they could. The budget's not there. The owner has told me he's trying to keep it to a certain level, so there's no room in the budget for a refret, which this instrument could use. But we're going to go ahead and power on. I'll clean up a little bit here. There's a lot of dust and mojo on the fingerboard. I'll try to get some of that off. Okay, I think we can wrap up this video here real shortly. It's about 3 days since that last section of video footage that I took. Discovered a few things while putting the neck on. It was still shifting around. It felt like there was some kind of movement. Every time I moved the guitar, I'd hear something go pop, and I was worried that the braces, but I've checked the braces. Everything's held fine, and what I discovered is the top on this side had pulled loose from the block and was kind of spongy like we found on this other side. So I got some glue into there and clamped that up, let that ride for over 24 hours. Reinstalled the neck. I have strings on, brought up to pitch. They've been that way for 24 hours themselves, and I'm pleased to report that everything is stable and seems to be holding true. We still have some deflection in the top, but it's not even close to being as bad as it was. Still a little bit of a hump, but with the shim and the adjustable saddle that we have, I'm able to achieve 5/64 on the bass and 4.5 64 on the treble. Everything does play nice and clean. The frets are horrible in some areas. Some are ground down to about 20 thousandths, but the budget is not there. I was told to keep it to a certain budget, so that would way exceed the budget. In fact, the refret would cost more than the budget. We also had talked about some side dots, being that this is a right-handed guitar. There's no dot markers on the sides, on the bass side, what is now the bass side. Again, that's really not in the budget for this. The owner, I don't believe this is going to be his main player. I think this was just a family heirloom that he's trying to get back into playable condition, and I think we've achieved that. He is a local guy, so if he decides that he would like, a fret job and some side dots, that's something that I can do at another time. I'm pleased to report that our little saddle, that we had to slope it opposite direction just to try to get the intonation, because the orientation of the guitar has changed now to left-handed. I'm pleased to say that it's actually remarkably accurate as it sits right now. The tuning seems to be rather stable. I was able to shave and polish the nut down a little bit so that it wasn't so prominent, and I did a bit of cleaning, getting the guitar back into so it's ready for the big dance. I think the client will be happy with the outcome. Let's see if we can get a look in there. it looks worse than it is just because of a shadow, but we actually have that pretty tight. I can't get a 0.004 feeler gauge more than a 1/4 inch into there, so it's nice and tight now. Over time, the woods have shrunk, so we have a considerable gap on each side. And if we had more money in the budget, I'd probably make some shims to go along the walls just to make the neck fit a little tighter. Again, it's something that can be done later on if the client wishes it to be so. So, all right, I'm going to wrap this up here, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. And I have other videos that are being worked on right now. So please check back with us for new video updates, new footage. In the meantime, if you can do us a favor, hit the like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. And until next time.